You are listening to the Fly the W podcast. It's episode 17, season number 4. Matt Shaw's spring debut. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to this podcast. Follow us on all the socials. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. Of course, we're on Facebook. Also, email Crawly and I, flythew670 at gmail.com. All right, Crawly, we just wrapped up a great weekend of Cubs baseball. And a couple of interesting things, couple of nuggets. Let's get going first with the game against the Angels on Thursday, as we saw Jordan Wicks make his second start of the spring.
Yeah, it was a weird weekend. The Cubs finished from Thursday, the last time we talked, 2 wins, 1 loss, 2 ties. So it was a bizarre Thursday. Jordan Wicks makes his second start of the spring going up against Caden Dana of the Angels. First innings of work, second batter. Former Southsider Tim Anderson takes Wicks deep. Cubs down 1-0 early. Dustin, what is it about White Sox or former White Sox taking Cubs deep? Anderson only had 9 home runs all last season with the Marlins. Come on.
It's okay. It's okay in the spring. It's okay. Right. It's okay in the spring, just not during the regular season.
Well, anyway, Wicks gave up another run. He went 2 2/3 innings, gave up 4 hits, 2 runs, no walks, and 3 Ks. Cubs were down 2-0 in the 5th when Michael Busch singled and scored on a Dansby Swanson double. Dansby would score on a Carson Kelly single, and the game was tied at 2. It would stay tied until the 8th with 2 runners on. Johnny Long doubled to make it a 4-2 game, and Jonathan Long, Dustin, it's one of those stories that you like to look at in spring training. He's a fun prospect to watch. He looked great last year in the minors. He played in the Arizona League and made the Fall-Star team. He could play first and third. He has a really good approach at the plate. Just one of those under-the-radar guys that's really fun to watch. Just a good story, but unfortunately the Cubs didn't win this one as Brooks Kriske gave up a 2-run homer in the 9th for a blown save. This one ended up in a 4-4 tie. Until the Kriske home run, though, 6 Cubs relievers held the Angels scoreless. Closer Ryan Presley pitched a clean inning with 2 strikeouts. Daniel Palencia bounced back, clean inning with the strikeout. Kyle Tucker was 0 for 3. He played right field for the first time and had a little bit of a flub, but he recovered and nearly threw out the runner at third. First time seeing that cannon, which was nice to see. Seiya was the DH. He went 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts, but one of them was due to the crappy Seiya strike zone. So, tie game, it's going to happen. But then we get to the game on Friday, which was really wild, right? We didn't think the Cubs were going to go undefeated all spring training, and it looked like this was going to be the end of the line. Kyle Higashioka, if you remembered, I wanted the Cubs to sign him as the backup catcher this offseason.
Yes, you did.
Played for San Diego last year, but he signed with the Rangers. He was 2 for 3 with 2 homers and 6 RBIs. One of those coming off starter Justin Steele. Have yourself a day, Kyle Higashioka. Cubs were trailing 8-2. It looked like the streak was coming to an end, but they scored 4 runs in the 7th with a 3-run blast by Hayden McGreary, big boy, first baseman. And then they scored 2 in the 9th, a Jordan Ogu RBI single to tie up the game. And so the youngsters did it again. Steele looked pretty good. He didn't give up a hit or a walk in the 1st or the 3rd inning, but he gave up a 2-out single to former White Sox Jake Berger, followed by a Higashioka home run. Steele went 3 innings, gave up 2 runs on 2 hits with no walks and 2 Ks. But Dustin, after the game, he talked about adding a changeup that he's been working on to his fastball slider mix, which would be really interesting if he can get this to work, because what Justin Steele is doing, normally when you're a starter, you have more than 2 pitches. But Steele's basically been going with the fastball slider. But if he adds a changeup, I think that's going to really change the dynamic to what he can bring to a game.
Right, and keep in mind they're always working on stuff in spring training. The other cool thing is that no walks. Like, to me, that's one of the stats to keep. If you can avoid walking guys in spring training, that's something I like to see.
Now, Tyson Miller tried to bounce back from a rough, wild first outing. Remember, he had 10 balls in a row that he threw. He pitched slightly better this time, going 1 inning, giving up 1 run on 2 hits with only 1 walk. So much better outing. But the Cubs and Texas finished an 8-8 tie. 3 straight tie ball games, Dustin, which is the longest streak of consecutive games tied since at least 2006. But there is one thing I did want to mention from this game. In the 4th inning, Travis Jankowski's up at the plate, 2 outs. The count is 2-2, and he gets rung up by the home plate umpire. But wait, They were playing at Surprise Stadium, which has the automatic ball strike challenge system. Jankowski taps the helmet, and upon review, the call is overturned. So instead of being out in the inning over, the count is 3-2. Jankowski hits a single, and the next batter, Gage Workman, hits a 2-run homer. That is why this ABS system is so important. Instead of the Cubs being down 2-0, the game is tied because they are able to challenge a bad call and keep the inning alive. I will be the second happiest person in the world when they fully adopt this next season, other than Seiya Suzuki, who constantly gets screwed.
Just the key thing there, Crawly, I want you to say that again. Next season, not as in the 2025 baseball season, but in the 2026 baseball season. This is not something that's going to happen. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. It is exciting. I'm with you. Fix the problem, but it's not going to be implemented this upcoming baseball season.
No, they're going to fix any kind of tweaks or issues that they have before they fully implement it in there. And that's not a big deal, just as long as we keep moving in the right direction. And speaking of Gage Workman, Dustin, how impressive has he been? He's 6 for 19 with 2 homers and 7 RBIs. He's slashing 316, 391, 632. So if you remember, the Cubs selected him in the Rule 5 draft in December from the Tigers. Now, here's the thing. That means he has to stay with the team the entire season. If the Cubs want to take him off to make room for somebody else, he would have to be placed on outright waivers in order to be removed. And then he must be offered back to the Tigers for half the cost that they got him. They got him for $100,000. They would have to give him back to the Tigers. The Tigers would have the option to reacquire him for $50,000. Here's why it gets complicated, though, with Workman. We know our starting infield, right? Bush at first, Nico at second, Dansby at short, Shaw at third. You always kind of have 3 on your bench plus your backup catcher. Having Seiya as a DH and 4th outfielder helps the situation, but this is what the competition for the last 3 bench spots is going to look like. John Birdie, Vidal Brujan, Ben Cowles, Justin Turner, and Gage Workman. You also have Greg Allen and Travis Jankowski. So we're going to want to keep a close eye on this, Dustin, because there's only, when you talk about Workman, that's one spot, right? And the other spot that you're going to probably assume is going to be Birdie will be one of the, or Turner. I mean, it's going to be confusing. Somebody's going to have to go, and this is what we're going to have to watch out for. Luckily, we're not sure about Shaw we'll talk about this in a little bit. Shaw, if he makes it to Japan or not. We know Nico's not. And so you can possibly hold off on making that decision until all of spring training is over. But again, when you talk about that, you're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys for 2 spots. That's going to be tough. When you're talking about Birdie, Brujan, Turner, Jankowski, and Greg Allen, it's going to be tough.
They're all not going. They're all not going to Japan. They're all not breaking camp with this team. That we know for sure.
Right. So we'll see. Saturday, split squad, Dustin. Our first split squad game of the season. How ironic was it that the Cubs were playing Cleveland on 3-1 day, March 1st, which is a sacred holiday for Cub fans.
Right.
For those of you that don't know, 3-1 day is to celebrate the Cubs being down 3-1 to the Cleveland Indians and then coming back. So irony that they're playing Cleveland.
Good thing it worked out, right?
Yes. Big day for Seiya Suzuki. He was 0 for 12 coming into the game, but went 2 for 3 with an RBI single in the first and a 2-run single in the third. 3 ribeyes for Seiya. So good to see him getting off the schneid. The pitchers, though, in this game were really impressive. Colin Rea pitched 3 innings, gave up no runs, 1 hit, 2 walks, and 2 Ks. Rea may be a very important piece, especially when we give an update on the injuries the Cubs have. Julian Merriweather pitched a clean inning with 2 strikeouts and once again hitting the high 90s. Dustin, he looked like the dominant reliever he was in 2023. Newcomers Ryan Brasher and Caleb Thielbar both look good, both pitching a clean inning, with Thielbar striking out 2 batters. Brad Keller, who we've been raving about, he came into the game in the 7th, but he pitched 2 1/3 innings. He pitched a 1-2-3 7th inning with 2 strikeouts, but he gave up a 2-run homer in the 8th and a solo and a home run and a triple in the 9th. The wind was really blowing out 10 miles per hour to center, but let's see if they continue to have him pitch multiple innings. or if they start to really decide to use him as just a one-inning reliever. But the Cubs did win this game 7-4. On the other side of the split squad, this one was all offense. The Cubs crushed the Royals 11-1. Michael Busch 2 for 3 with 3 RBIs, a double and a triple. PCA 2 for 3 with 4 RBIs, a double, and his first spring home run. Dustin, they're both hitting 500, Busch and PCA. Like to see that quick start. Moises Ballesteros.
It's a great thing to see. Yeah.
Ballesteros 1 for 3 with a 2-run bomb. Gage Workman 1 for 2 with an RBI and 2 walks. An absolute massacre. Ben Brown got stretched out a little bit. He went 2.1 innings, gave up 1 run and 4 hits, 1 walk, and 2 Ks. Eli Morgan pitched 1 2/3 inning. He gave up no runs, no hits, no walks with 1 K. And Porter Hodge pitched 1 inning, gave up no runs, no hits, 1 walk, and 2 Ks. Dustin Presley is definitely going to be the closer. Again, he didn't come here to be a setup man. It's what he was in Houston. But Hodge is picking up right where he left off this season. In 3 innings of work, he hasn't given up a run or a hit. He's walked 2 and he struck out 3. And so, it talks to the depth of this bullpen. And it's really exciting for me to kind of really watch what's happening here. And so the Cubs, after this game, the split squad sweep, had their longest streak without a loss to start the Cactus season since 2006. Dustin, I do have to ask you one question. In the early game of that split squad against the Guardians, I don't know if you saw this one, Seiya Suzuki, center fielder.
Yeah, pretty interesting, right? He wants to get his legs underneath him a little bit. I was worried, Crawly, that we were going to have to change the name of this podcast to the Fly the Tee.
Right?
Fly the Tee podcast.
Now, I will tell you there that Seiya, they're going to give him they're going to give him reps in center. They're going to give him reps in left. I'm okay with left, Dustin. I can live with that. I really, really am just not into seeing him at center. I don't know if they want to maybe move Ian Happ one day to center and then have Seiya play left. If you're giving, I don't know.
I mean, if you're doing that, what's happening with PCA?
You may have to give PCA a day off. He may be slumping there. Who's your backup center fielder? And that's where the question of those bench spots, whether you're going to keep Brujan and have him as an infielder, outfielder, or
that's what I was going to say. I figured Brujan was probably your backup, utility outfielder kind of thing.
Gage Allen would be another name that's out there. He's having a pretty good spring too. So we're going to have to dig into it more probably when the Cubs get back from Japan. Dustin, Sunday, all good things must come to an end. The Cubs winning streak finally ends with a 7-3 loss to the Reds. Matt Boyd made the start for the Cubs. He pitched 2 1/3 innings, gave up 3 runs on 4 hits, 1 walk, but he did have 4 Ks. I talked about the importance of each and every Keegan Thompson appearances. He's on the bubble for making this roster since he has no options. This one wasn't good. He went 1 2/3 innings. He gave up 2 solo home runs, but he did strike out 2. I just don't see him making the team, Dustin.
Unless there's some type of injury bug going through there, I don't think so either.
Closer Ryan Presley pitched a clean inning, no walks, hits, or strikeouts. Jack Neely looked good. He gave up 1 hit, but struck out 3 in 1 inning of work. But Dustin, all the pitching, the loss, all of it was secondary. The big story was Matt Shaw's spring debut at third base, batting second. He's been sidelined by an oblique injury, and he is slated to be the Cubs' opening day starter. Good to see him get some game action. He went 0 for 3 with a couple of hard hit balls in his first 2 at-bats, but he popped out 10 in the third with the bases loaded.
Yeah, that stunk, popping out with the bases loaded.
Yep, but he also made some defensive plays, including the first play of the game. As we always say, the ball will find you. So good to see, but Elise Menaker had a chance to talk to Matt Shaw after he was taken out of the game after that pop-up. And, the kid seems to have a good head on his shoulders. This is what he said about the debut.
Craig Counsell said, have fun. Did you have fun? How was it out there?
Yeah, I had a blast. It's good to be back playing baseball.
What does it feel like health-wise for you at this point?
It feels 100%. It's one of those things you're getting your feet back under you. You have a lot of work to do to get up to 9 innings, but it's good to be out there, and it felt really good.
The mindset, because you're someone who wants to get your crack at third base, but you can't get out there as quickly as you want. What were you telling yourself through all this?
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly a good moment for me to just work on a few things defensively. It honestly worked out very nicely, kind of get my tempo down a third, and now it's ready to rock and roll.
Ready to rock and roll. What are we thinking here, Dustin?
I don't think there's any shot he goes to Japan. They're also saying he's going to play every other day for now. I think the key is, Crawly, is, how does he wake up on Monday? How does he feel on Tuesday? How does he look in the game on Tuesday? Has he come out of that? Like that, those are the keys. And I think the hitting will be there. I think it's all about the fielding and can he field the position at this level?
Yep, it'll be interesting to see. And that takes us to our injury updates and roster moves. Nico Horner is still hitting in the cage and progressing through his throwing program. But Craig Counsell gave us some news about where we stand with Nico.
We're excited about where Nico's at. I think it's all good. This is a good news situation. It's, for Nico, it's not necessarily good news in that just he has to miss 2 games and has to miss the trip. But on the other side of it, it's good news because I think we were very much tracking towards opening day, domestic opening day, of him being in good shape, of him being ready for that and prepared for that. So, it stinks in terms of not getting to be part of the trip. But his rehab is really in the last kind of couple weeks we think really taken a step forward. Maybe 3 weeks has taken a big step forward, and he is kind of starting to progress quicker. And so we're in a really good spot. And if we can have him for domestic opening day, I think, going back to surgery date, that'd be a really positive result.
All right, so we get it. It is official. Nico not going to Japan.
Yeah, not shocking. Not shocking at all. He has to get his work in here stateside. Domestic. I made a joke on the Mully and Haw show about domestic opening day. Every time you hear them say domestic opening day, have a swig of a domestic beer or have a shot of a domestic liquor, because we are going to be hearing that a ton. The domestic debut. It's kind of getting a little annoying, to be honest with you.
I hear you on that, but again, I agree with Craig. It sucks, but with the depth they have this year, I'm okay with him missing 2 games. I know people are going to say they count just as much as the 2 games in August or September. Yes, but you know what? If you can get Nico ready by opening day domestic, sorry, Dustin, but if you can get him ready by the 27th to play versus Arizona when I'm in the stands, then you can live with it. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying you can't live with it. I think it's very interesting how they're handling Nico. It's going to be very interesting to see how they handle Matt Shaw. Do they want to bring him to Japan to get him around the teammates? Do you leave him behind so he's doing all kinds of extra work? Are they worried about the flight? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and so before Shaw started the game on Sunday, he took his first live batting practice on Saturday, and it was kind of cool because he took live BP from 2 other guys recovering from injuries. Obviously, we know Cade Horton had a serious injury last season, and Luke Little, who had a shoulder strain, he was getting some BP work. So good to see all 3 of those guys on the field, and hopefully Luke's back sooner rather than later, but making progress. But there is no decision yet. And so, Dustin, I think with Shaw, it is going to be a day-by-day, week-by-week thing, like you said, even though we're 2 weeks away from Japan. But it is going to be, I think, a game-time decision. And don't forget, they're going to be not just playing those 2 games, they're going to be playing an additional 2 games in Japan. I think with Nico and how established he is with the team, I think it's fine. They're leaving him, and he's behind. He's behind where Shaw is. He obviously hasn't made a game yet. I think with Shaw, if he can play, I think they're going to try to get him in there. We'll see, but nothing yet. Unfortunately, Javier Assad's bullpen session, which was supposed to happen this weekend, was pushed back until the end of next week. We also got an update from Craig Counsell on Assad.
Yeah, I think with Assad, we're doing great. We have not thrown bullpens yet. Bullpens end of next week. But obviously, this means he's going to miss the start of the season. And we want to give him just a proper build-up, and that means a couple bullpens, a couple lives, and then starting kind of a ramp-up as a starter. So that puts some days on the calendar and gets you into the season.
So that's official now that Javier Assad will not be ready when the season begins.
Also not going to Japan, Javier Assad.
Correct. And so the question then for Assad, who gets that fifth starter spot? Now it's up to grabs. That's where the Colin Rea and the Ben Brown and those guys getting those starts. I mean, Jordan Wicks.
Ben Brown, please. Ben Brown.
Well, you got three guys that are going to compete for that job there, and with Brown, Wicks, and Rea. So,
No
two
Rea.
young guys, and then the veteran.
No Rea.
No Rea. All right. And so we do have we had our second and third round of roster cuts on Saturday. Gavin Hollowell, Caleb Killian, Jack Neely, and Cody Petit were optioned to AAA. And Riley Martin was sent to minor league camp. But Dustin, when you on Sunday, catcher Pablo Aliendo was sent down as well. The roster was trimmed from 59 to 53 players. But Dustin, Gavin Hollowell, Caleb Killian, Jack Neely, Cody Petit, all those guys were in the Cubs bullpen for a decent portion last season, especially at the end of the year. They're not even going to be on the opening day roster. That just tells you how much depth they've added to the bullpen this year, and it's a good thing to see.
Oh, gotta love the depth, Crawly. Gotta love the depth, because that bullpen was something to not be desired, and on paper anyway. And so far in spring training, it's looked pretty good. This is the Fly the W670 podcast, season 4, episode 17. Calling this one Matt Shaw's spring debut. Please leave us a 5-star review. Don't forget you listen and download and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. All right, Crawly, it's that time of the year in the spring when we size up the other teams in the NL Central. First up, Crawly, you're talking Pirates baseball with Noah Hiles, covers the beat for the Pittsburgh Post Gazette, to give us insight into the Pirates offseason and what they plan on improvements after another last-place finish and the vibe of spring training for the Pirates.
It is time for us to preview the Cubs' opponent in the NL Central. First up, I'm going to be talking today to Noah Hiles, the beat writer for the Pirates for the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. Noah, how you doing today?
I'm great. I mean, like we were talking about before recording, I mean, it's sunny and 75 down here in Florida. I'm not going to complain too much about that.
Yeah, it's been, like I said, it's been a weird one. I know in Arizona, it's just been beautiful weather as well.
Yeah.
So obviously the Pirates playing in the Grapefruit League. And when we take a look at the standings for the 2024 NL Central, somehow, some way, the Brewers did it again. The Cubs and the Cardinals tied, which is irritating because they have the Cardinals above the Cubs. Then the Reds, and then the Pirates finished just behind the Reds at 76 and 86. But regardless of that last place finish, and there have been a few last place finishes for the Pirates the last few years, that all changed on May 11th, right?
It did. And as long as you got a guy like that, I mean, I don't know if there are going to be a ton of first place finishes, but I don't think there's going to be many more last place finishes when you have someone like that in your rotation who can guarantee you a really good chance to win about 25 to 30 times a year.
And we're talking, of course, of Paul Skeens, who was called up against, of all teams, the Cubs. What do you remember about that day? Obvious to me, when I think about the hype, that reminds me a lot of the Mark Pryor hype going back to 2003, which just kind of ages myself a little bit. But what do you remember about that Paul Skeens call up?
Last year was my first year on the beat. And when I got promoted to it, I knew that this is the story of the year before it even started. I had no idea how it was going to unfold. And obviously, I don't think anyone expected him to be as good as he ended up being. But yeah, that was a day that we knew was coming. It was just when I tried hard to break that. I got very close, but the team announced it right before I could get it confirmed. But just the build up to it, it's something where, the Steelers and the Penguins, they've had so many talents that define that era of a sport. Pirates haven't had many guys like that, especially in my lifetime. I turned 30 this month, and there's one guy really in my lifetime who you can point to that would fall into the category of a Paul Amalu, a Ben Roethlisberger, a Sidney Crosby, of Genny Malkin, and he's still on the team. His hair's different. He plays a different position, but Andrew McCutchen's just been the guy. And if you look at Pirates history, they've had their share of great players, but it's always been hitters. They haven't had like an amazing pitcher to this extent anyway. And it's just so different. It's so foreign. And as a storyteller who gets paid to follow this team, it's nice to know what the story is. So that day, just the anticipation and the buildup of, wow, this guy's already here. This guy, we did a thing every time he pitched in the minor leagues. We did a thing called Skeens Watch, and I would analyze every single inning because everyone wanted to know, okay, what's his pitch count up to? How many innings did he go? Because there was that gradual buildup because you got an idea, okay, if he's going 5 innings, if he's throwing 80, 90 pitches, he's ready. And if you look at the AAA numbers, I mean, they're hilariously dominant. So when he finally got there, it was like a holy cow, like this is... It reminded me a lot of when McCutchen debuted, honestly. And it's just like, this is the face of this window where, he's not going to be able to do it alone. But if this team here in the 2020s, the rest of the 2020s, if the Pirates are going to do anything, this guy's going to be the catalyst for it. He's going to lead the charge. And this is the start of a very important chapter. That's what it felt like. And ironically, what I remember from that game was everything aside from Paul. I remember like a million walks in a row. That was like the maddest I've ever been at work because I was like, if they just got one more out, they could have called this game and I would have got to go home early. But instead, I stayed there until like 3 a.m. basically. But very memorable game.
Yeah, it was Skeens versus Hendricks, and what blew you away right there is that I think he hit like triple digits like 17 times. He had 7 strikeouts and 4+ innings. He was going up against Kyle Hendricks.
That was Steele. He faced Steele in Pittsburgh. He faced Hendricks. The one that everyone actually remembers is when he faced Hendricks in Wrigleyville like a week later. That one, I think Paul would rather us all recall that as his first actual start. That was the real taste of Paul Skeens. That was a pretty good one.
That was the 6 no-hit innings.
6 no-hit innings, final
11
pitch.
strikeouts.
Yeah, final pitch of the day is 100 miles per hour, pitch 100, yeah.
And then he would eventually go on to win the NL Rookie of the Year. And so as we kind of take a look at the Pirates this year, like you said, the window now is open. It feels to me, and again, when you got a guy like Paul Skeens, you look at it and you say to yourself, wow, what a great pitcher. But you guys have other great pitchers as well. When you look at the Mitch Keller and Jared Jones and those kind of guys, it feels like the pitching's there. As far as the offseason goes, it kind of seems like, similar complaints to Chicago, the question about the money being spent, but in a different context. And like you said, the context of this window being open, you got these guys for 6 years. And then after that, with the going rate of pitchers nowadays for aces, who knows what, Paul Skeens, by the time his contract's up, might be worth $1 billion.
Yeah.
The time to move is now. Would you say that the offseason would be a disappointment?
I think so. That's how the fans feel. The only way that it doesn't end up being a disappointment is if this team wins 90 games, if this team goes to the playoffs. Because the offseason, the message was they believed in this young core. They believed in players who immensely underperformed last year. And for one reason or another, the Pirates justified it by saying, this was just an anomaly. Look at this guy's past success. Or it's too early to give up on this guy who's a first overall pick. Or this guy just had some injuries. If we can get him healthy, he can be the player that we think he can be. And that's not necessarily the worst approach to take when, you're a small market team and you believe in the guys that you've drafted and developed. But at some point you have to supplement that talent with, surrounding guys. Like you look at a team like the Royals, very similar size market to the Pirates. Yeah. They didn't go out and buy Witt Jr., but what they did is they spent money and surrounded him with veterans, just, 1 to 2 war guys around him. That makes his job a little easier. He doesn't have to do all of it by himself. And the Pirates didn't really do that this year, which was frustrating to a lot of fans. I think they did make some good transactions. I think that they added a lot of depth to their pitching, which in a way they really struggled at signing hitters. So, you're good at scouting in one area. Why not go all in on that? I feel like they kind of did that a little bit. I feel like the pitching staff as a whole, its floor is a lot higher this year. But the offense was always the issue here. And I don't see how the additions of Tommy Pham and Spencer Horwitz make this lineup terrifically better. It's going to come down to guys who have already been here. Can Andrew McCutchen do it again? Can Henry Davis play like a first overall pick? Can Brian Hayes stay healthy? Can Jack Sawinski be a 20 home run bat like he was for a couple of years? If those guys can do that, that's great. But when we're saying the word if 4 or 5 times when you're looking through the lineup, that's more hope than it is strategy. So
Right. And you're talking about an offense that finished 13th in the NL last season. And Spencer Horwitz is recovering from injury, right?
Yeah, so it was a story we broke the night before spring training. We did a 90-minute live stream on our YouTube channel, which if you want some Pirates coverage, you can go check that out at PG Pirates. But we did a live stream for 90 minutes, and then as soon as we got off the stream, a source hit us up and said, "Hey, Horwitz showed up in Bradenton with a cast on his wrist." So we did some digging around, and we found out that he had some chronic wrist issues before he was acquired. The Pirates got good, accurate information, and they traded for a player who has injury history, which that's not crazy. Most players have some sort of injury history in their past. But after the trade, which occurred during the winter meetings, maybe a month before report day for spring training, he was working out and he aggravated his wrist. The doctor said it was a new injury, but it's on the same wrist where he's had prior injuries. And so he's going to miss pretty much all of spring training as far as playing on the field. I mean, he's doing drills. He's swinging a bat now with 2 hands. He's not hitting baseballs, though. He's fielding grounders, but not throwing. And that was the big addition for this team this offseason. They traded a 3-WAR pitcher for him, along with 2 top 30 prospects for a guy who's only played 112 games in the major leagues. But it's someone they believe in, and someone that I think they believe can be a solution to the turnstile that's been first base for this team for the last 30 years, essentially, and someone who can be a consistent presence at the top of the order. He has the on base. He has the speed that you would like in that spot. So they clearly valued him. They gave up a lot for him, and it's tough when that's the biggest move of your offseason, something that fans are already kind of skeptical about, and they don't get to watch him play in spring training once because he's in an aircast.
And Tommy Pham is just, Cub fans got to know him well with his time in the Cardinals, but just he's been around a lot. There's been weird things, the fantasy football fight, all this stuff. Is there any concern about Tommy Pham, the clubhouse presence?
No, I think that's actually why they wanted him, personally. I think this team last year was missing a little edge. And say what you want about Tommy Pham, he will provide that. And I've actually had conversations with players even as late as today, just talking with guys who are other veterans on the team, and just kind of saying like, hey, you guys were missing some leaders last year, and they would agree, and they would say like, this is as crazy as the perception is on Tommy Pham to be playing this game at this level at 37 years old. That deserves some respect. And again, while he has his perception, winning teams are always trying to acquire this guy. I mean, he's been acquired 4 times in the last 3 trade deadlines by playoff teams. So there's clearly a different reputation for this guy within the game of baseball. And for a team that has a lot of young guys who are pre-arb and a lot of guys who just haven't been around any sort of winning, he's someone that I think sets a tone. And if it takes being afraid of your left fielder to show up early and lock in and put in some extra work, then you know what? Hey, that's what's got to happen. But from conversations I've had with multiple people on the team this week, they say like he's already kind of making an impact in the clubhouse.
Yeah, all right. Well, as far as he goes, he's part of this outfielder mix. It's going to have Brian Reynolds, O'Neill Cruz, and we mentioned local boy made good Jack Sawinski.
Yeah.
But when you talk about Brian Reynolds, I know there was talk about extension and then there wasn't. Where do you feel like he's at this point in his Pirates career?
Well, he got extended a couple years ago, so he's going to be here for the long run. And I think that Reynolds' role on this team is something that's lacking throughout the rest of the lineup. It's stability. You know exactly what you're getting with Brian Reynolds. You're getting a 2 to 3 WAR player. You're getting a batting average between 260 and 280. You're getting 80 to 90 runs batted in. You're getting 20 to 25 home runs. And there's not a team in baseball that wouldn't sign up for that, for a corner outfield position. Especially a team like the Pirates, where you're not necessarily going out and spending big money on a bat, and having him in the 2 spot of the lineup, 155, 160 games a year is huge for this team. He's moving to right field this year, which is interesting. They tried to do that last season, but they ended up having to keep him in left just because other guys weren't performing. But I think the move to right will serve him better. His defensive metrics weren't great as far as fielding. He had a lot of outfield assists. I think he tied with Pittsburgh guy. What's his name? Kid from Mount Lebanon. Ian Happ. Yes. Yeah. Played against him. I should know that. But yeah, he tied Ian Happ, I believe, for the National League lead in outfield assists last year. And I think part of that was he wasn't in great position defensively, and teams just felt the need to test his arm. But he still does have a good arm. I think putting him in right field where it's a little shorter will help his range and will still allow him to use that arm, and will allow him to do what he does best. And that's, hit the ball well and be a consistent force at that number 2 spot in the order.
And you talk about hitting the ball well, but O'Neill Cruz, when he made that move from infield to outfield, that seemed like a bizarre one to me. And again, I know Aaron Judge is a big guy, but seeing O'Neill Cruz in center field will never not be bizarre for me.
I mean, did you see him at shortstop? Because he's the tallest person to ever play that position. So I think he's going to end up benefiting a lot from that move. I don't know if he's going to be a center fielder forever. I think he's probably better off in right field long term. But right now, while he's still young, I mean, he can get the balls in 4 steps that most guys take 7 steps, 8 steps to get to, because of that long stride, and he's super fast. I mean, O'Neill Cruz genetically, I don't know how many athletes are better than him when in this sport. I think maybe the only one that you could compare him to is Ellie De La Cruz. When we're talking exit velocity, throw speed, top sprint speed, those two are like at the top of all of those metrics. But for O'Neill, it's just putting it all together. Last year was his first full major league season because of injuries, because of the pandemic, because of other things. He's just never really been on the field. They felt like they owed him an opportunity to prove that he could be a shortstop. And for a team like the Pirates to get 2020 production, potential 30 home run pop at that position, that's big for them. But it became clear that it wasn't working. So they moved him to center field. I was skeptical of why they waited to do it at the very end of the year. I mean, they did it after they fell out of contention, but it's like, why not just wait in the offseason and let him develop there? But I actually, now in hindsight, I kind of like that they did that, because they gave him a chance to get his feet wet in games that really had no meaning. And he looked a lot better than I thought he did, or thought he would. And when you're springing something like that on an athlete who's confident, who believes, hey, I'm a shortstop, I don't have time to learn this new thing, I don't want to learn this new thing. But when they go out there and they say, I actually think I could be kind of good at this, that's good positive momentum you could bring into an offseason. And that's what happened with him. And so I think he's fully embracing center field. And when you talk about what needs to happen for these guys to win games, Reynolds and Cruz, those are the 2 guys. They've got to lead the charge. And there's no one with a higher ceiling of potential as far as power in this lineup than Cruz. He's a guy that I think they believe can hit 30, 40 home runs a year. And I think he has the potential to do it. It's just putting that talent together.
Now, we talked about Spencer Horwitz at first base. Adam Frazier, who was drafted by the Pirates, is back this year, so you get some veteran leadership there. Brian Hayes, I remember the first time I saw him in Wrigley, I think he hit a home run. But every time I see that guy, I always get nervous. I feel like he just is another guy that you talk about with a lot of pop. And so, again, everything looks good, but you just don't have that 4 to 5 WAR player. And I know the Cubs talked about that when they got Kyle Tucker. That just seems to be really the piece that's missing for you. When you kind of look at this, what needs to happen for the Pirates to really truly have a successful season to make them playoff contenders?
Well, I think first thing is O'Neal Cruz needs to be a star. And I think that's not out of the question. The potential's there, and I think being in center field will allow him to be a better offensive producer. And then the second thing I said, there are 4 guys who need to be better than they were last year. And when I say better, I mean significantly better. And those guys are Henry Davis, their first overall pick in 2021. Brian Hayes, a guy who can simply be a 2 to 3 WAR player just with his glove. And anything you get offensively is bonus. But he only played 94 games last year due to recurring back issues. Jack Sawinski, a guy who in 23 hit 26 home runs. I believe he hit 19 the year prior, 20 the year prior, and like less than 100 games. And the last one's David Bednar, who from 2021 to 2023 was among one of the best relievers in baseball and was terrible last year. Blew a lot of saves and cost them a lot of ball games. If you can get 2 of those 4 guys to be the players that the Pirates believe they can be, a lot of issues are solved because they fixed the problems that sunk them last year. They missed out on pop from a guy like Henry Davis, who, if you look at his numbers in the minor leagues, he dominates every level. And he was the best bat in that draft that included, Lawler and Mayer and all these high-end prospects that have yet to debut. He made it up before all of them. I know he's a college guy, and that's probably why. But I mean, if he's like played 162 games in AAA, his pace would be like 40 plus home runs or something. He just can't translate it to the highest level. Now, he's still only 24. But if you add that to this lineup, it's a lot better. If Brian Hayes can be that 3-4 WAR guy, which if he just swings if he has like a 105 OPS plus and plays that level of defense, he could be a 3.5 WAR player. Like that's not speculation. That's just logic. David Bednar has been proven to be that reliable closer. And if you can allow Paul Skeens to give you 7 shutout innings and have a guy who can close the door in the 9th, that's a very reliable formula for success. And then Sawinski, again, that's as much as Tommy Pham's a great clubhouse leader. I'm sure if you asked any of the Pirates, who would you like to be making the most starts in left field? They would rather the answer be Sawinski because he's younger. He's still, I think, 24, 25 maybe. And they need home run power, man. They need home run power because they've got guys who can get on base in this lineup. They've got guys who can hit for singles, who can move you over. If there's a runner on second with no outs, they can get you to third base. You need guys who put balls in the seats, and they don't have enough of that right now. And they didn't spend any money to get anyone new who can do that. So if they're going to get better, it's going to be from guys like Cruz taking their game to the next level, or guys like Sawinski and Hayes from finding who they used to be and returning, or the guys like Davis developing into what the Pirates believe they can be.
I know today wasn't the greatest outcome, 10-4 loss to the Tigers, but in general, it's been a pretty good spring training in the Grapefruit League. I know that means nothing at the end of the day, but you'd rather have the team winning than not. What are the vibes like in camp?
They're high. And I think a lot of it has to do with all the names that I mentioned are coming in with good circumstances. Like Brian Hayes and David Bednar, I know it's the cliche, I'm in the best shape of my life, but they're notably like slimmer. And Brian has been a guy who, can be a little moody. And I don't say that as a slight. I would be moody too if I went through everything that he went through as far as injuries and everything over the last couple of years. But he's been in a notably better mood. And that's something that the Pirates have outwardly pointed out and highlighted, and they're excited about. And he's hit the ball well. He's made some swing changes. It seems like he's not necessarily giving up on trying to fix the back, but it's like, hey, I'm going to be dealing with this forever. So now we've got to figure out a way to be the best player possible with this situation, knowing that it's not going away. But yeah, I just feel like all those guys, Jack Sawinski's, I thought had a really good spring so far. Henry Davis hit hit a home run today. He's looked better defensively. He's hit, I think, at least 2 or 3 doubles so far. And to the shock of many, he's hitting to all fields. He's normally just a strict pool hitter. So all of these guys made some changes, and you always hear about that in the early February stories, right, from your beat writers. Oh, this guy did this swing adjustment. This guy's changing the grip on this pitch, mechanical change on his delivery. But these changes make sense, and so far they're looking like it can lead to improvement. But again, it's the Grapefruit League. It's March 1st or 2nd. So let's see how it looks in the regular season.
And I got to laugh. And I don't know if you had a chance to ask him, but, obviously Andrew McCutchen coming back for another year. And obviously, he's been a staple in Pittsburgh for a long time, but he was a guy that I remember when he went to the Mets, they made him cut his hair. And
the Yankees.
I'm sorry, the Yankees. They made him cut his hair, and the Yankees finally got rid of that stupid policy. Did anyone ask him about that at all? Because
he actually he had his dreadlocks cut in Pittsburgh right before then, but they made him be barefaced, and he's always had facial hair too. And I know he wasn't a fan of that. I'll have to bring that up to him because he's good for some answers like that. He might give me an answer that he'll say beforehand, like, you better not report this to anyone, but he'll tell me how he really feels. And then he'll tell me how I should report how he really feels, and it's fun to cover guys like that.
Absolutely love it. Noah, tell our listeners where they can find your work if they're interested in kind of finding out more about the Pirates.
Yeah, you can follow my work at post-gazette.com. Myself and Andrew Dustin, I feel like we do a solid job of covering this team. We try to give you as much as we can. And again, if you want instant analysis on anything Pirates, you can check out our YouTube channel. We just created it this season. It's just for exclusive extra Pirates content. It's at PG Pirates on YouTube. And you can get spring training game recaps, mailbags, all sorts of fun stuff there.
Absolutely love it, Noah. Thank you for jumping on, and we'll definitely have to talk again. We know that the Cubs and Pirates are always going to be good for some battles.
Absolutely. I'm happy to come on whenever.
You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast, season 4, episode 17. And we are talking about Matt Shaw, but we're also talking about, will you be able to watch the Cubs on Comcast? Don't forget to leave us one of those 5-star reviews. And in this segment, there's lots of questions we need to ask our next guest as Crawly talked with Jeff Agrest, deputy sports editor and media columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times, to help us understand what the most likely outcome is in a standoff between Comcast subscribers and when or if they'll be able to watch their Cubs baseball.
Joining me now on the Fly the W podcast, I am happy to have on Jeff Agrest. He is the deputy sports manager of the Chicago Sun-Times and media columnist. Jeff, how you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I had to give you on here because it just seems like there is so much going on in the world of TV and baseball, kind of all this different stuff going on, and I'm trying to figure it out, and there's no better guy than you to talk about this.
Thank you.
I'm looking at this right now. First off, MLB and ESPN, how was that shocking to you to see that partnership dissolve?
Yeah, and I think it's shocking more to people of our age who were weaned on baseball on ESPN. Before there was MLB Network, I've been saying there was ESPN. You would have baseball doubleheaders on Tuesdays and Fridays. You had a single game on Wednesday, and then the Sunday night game, obviously on Sunday. You had baseball tonight every night. Before there was Quick Pitch, there was baseball tonight. And that's, I've been a baseball fan my whole life, but it went to another level in the 90s because of ESPN. They had so many games. You're talking about 4, 5, 6 games a week. So that was really hard to stomach, to see that this relationship between really two institutions in sports are going to separate. Now, there's a chance that ESPN and MLB could get back together on a shorter term, smaller deal. That's what ESPN is saying. But from the tone that Rob Manfred, the commissioner, is having, it doesn't seem possible. There's been reports he's already talking with Netflix and Amazon, maybe even NBC about putting the Sunday night package on those platforms. So from their side, it looks like this is kaput, and that's going to be a new age without ESPN in baseball's life, at least in my estimation.
Right. And ESPN was paying a fortune. I mean, $550 million, and there was an opt-out in the deal, but $550 million for 30 games. But Roku is paying $10 million for 18 games.
Right.
Apple is $85 million for Friday Night Baseball. So, it's, obviously things have changed. It feels like things, I don't know, maybe like you said, up to our age or something, but it feels like things have changed so much so quickly.
And you mentioned the 550, that was like 750 on a previous deal. And then when ESPN said, we want to cut back on baseball and keep it just to the Sunday night games, a couple of weeknight games, the home run derby, and then the wild card series, once they went down to that limited quantity of games, they went down to 550, and Manfred couldn't stomach that number going any lower. He couldn't bring that back to his owners. So that's, like you said, a lot of money. And he hurt himself in these negotiations by, as you also said, bringing in Roku and Apple for much less money. And that was ESPN's purpose behind getting out of the deal. And that the value of the deal had decreased such where MLB was charging way less for other packages, and ESPN wasn't going to pay a dime more. And Manfred couldn't go back to the owners with that. So now who's going to offer more, though, than 550 if ESPN wasn't going to pay that for a similar package? Or does maybe Fox take on more? It would make sense for them to take on the home run derby since they have the All-Star game the next night. Or does MLB go to Turner and say, let's move your Tuesdays to Sundays, and you could have that platform that you lost with no NBA. They had NFL back in the day on Sunday nights, a shared package with ESPN. So there are many places, even linear, like we said, for Manfred to go, but that's a blow. Like, ESPN is still ESPN. And if you're not, the Big Ten is fine without ESPN, but in a summer setting with no baseball the whole summer on ESPN, that's going to be different for them too, I think, in the end.
Huh. Now, I will say, I know people complain about the Roku and the Apple, and I think there was games on YouTube before, but I really, really enjoyed the Apple production and, just the quality of the picture and the sound and some of the options that they had. I do feel, and I wonder where Manfred's going with this, that there is, a chance for baseball, whether it's through a partnership with a company like Apple or something else, but to kind of rethink how broadcasts look in 2025.
Well, you're right about the Apple production. The picture is stunning. The graphics are very Apple-y in that they're seamless with the iPhone, with the Mac, with all their devices. They finally caught up the quality of the actual announcing to that by getting rid of the first crews they had, who were not all baseball trained, with a more traditional broadcast. So that's fine. It's not really appointment viewing though. Like, are you going to tune in for, because if it's interleague, you get a Pirates Guardians game on a Friday night when the Cubs are playing, maybe the Brewers on a Friday night in Milwaukee. Like, these are still local limited audiences. And the fact that they still haven't released any viewership numbers leads you to believe that they're not getting a whole lot of traffic. But it is true about the changing nature of broadcasting itself. You look at what other leagues have done. One example, the Four Nations tournament recently, where they would, and I had never seen this for extended periods, where you had the players on the ice on the bottom of the screen for the first period. That was interesting, and I enjoyed that. Where you have players, almost like a video game. When a team was on the power play, they would have the player's name hovering above that player, so you knew who had the puck. Like, there's going to be these kinds of elements that baseball is going to try to think about it, adding to their broadcasts, because you have a younger generation who is used to these types of busy screens where maybe you have more activity on the screen. If you've ever seen, and I don't know how big of a basketball fan you are, Clipper Vision, where the LA Clippers play their home games on their local broadcaster, it's wild stuff. I mean, it's obviously a Ballmer production, a Steve Ballmer production, where you have, a guy makes a 3-pointer and the basket explodes, or you see the angles that they're taking by cutting on the floor, and the degree is there to show you, like crazy stuff like that. Maybe baseball does that with pitching. There's so much pitching data available. Maybe you put that on the screen on the side. Broadcasters, and Amazon has shown this with NFL, with their Thursday night games when they have the next gen broadcasts. There's an unlimited supply of ideas for the future of broadcasting, and we're only tipping the surface here.
And that doesn't even include like the Manning cast, which was popular. And I know that I think baseball did this, the strat. Yeah, I know MLB did the stats broadcast with Jason Benetti a couple times. And what about the Nickelodeon when they did it with the NFL, where they have like weird characters popping up and stuff like that? And I'm looking at the
cartoon games. The Blackhawks did one last year. ESPN and Disney Plus have done hockey games like that. They did a basketball game this year where, Donald Duck's dunking the ball. Like, there's going to be some crazy outlandish stuff ahead that's really going to turn broadcasting productions on their head.
Well, speaking about bringing broadcast production on their head, I am someone that really, really loves Marquee. I love, the documentaries. I love the Road to Wrigley, the Whip Around show. I love so much about it. But, now hearing that Comcast and Marquee are having troubles, I'm not sure what tier I am of cable, but I am a Comcast subscriber. This brings me back to 2020 with the first rollout. And I remember Crane at CubsCon with the 1-800 number for Comcast. Call them. It's like, I just don't want to deal with this. I just want to watch baseball. And, it's frustrating, but again, these regional sports networks are getting dropped like bad habits.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't, how do I say this? To have launched 2 new regional sports networks in this city since 2000, in hindsight, well, he didn't need hindsight for CHSN's launch to know that was going to be a struggle. Marquee had the unfortunate timing of the pandemic coming a month after it launched. Like, that was unforeseeable. What wasn't unforeseeable was, though, that the bubble was about to pop on these RSNs as moneymakers. The Dodgers were really the last ones with their enormous deal with at the Time Warner. They were the last to get in while the getting was good. So now you have all these providers, Comcast moving RSNs to a higher tier. You have streaming services dropping them altogether, YouTube, Hulu, because they're costly for the program. They're costly for the provider, who then has to pass on the cost to the customer. And back in the day, when cable companies were living La Vida Loca because people who weren't watching sports were in essence subsidizing sports programming, those days are over, because streaming came along and was able to put sports in their own place. So now the sports fans are having to go pay that cost that they were being subsidized for so nicely by those who weren't watching sports in the 90s, 2000s. So it's a day of reckoning, and Marquee is great. I really do think it is. I think it was even better at the outset, coming out of the gate, when you had more original programming. They have clearly cut back on that. We haven't seen a documentary since when they had, they've had Billy Williams one, Ron Santo, Harry Carey.
I think Buck O'Neill was the last one.
Okay, we haven't seen one since then. Now they do a great job with Cubs 360. That's been wonderful in spring training with their pre and post. Those are comprehensive. They're starting this year, if you're noticing, to really hit home on Bears coverage. They're at the Combine for the first time. They're every day they've had Bears coverage. They have multiple shows during the week now. They've involved Tom Waddle and Robbie Gold. So they are putting efforts in direct places, but they have lost the Sky. They're only carrying Red Stars or now Stars games as on Marquee Plus, their streaming service. So they are sort of having to funnel or at least focus more on where they want their dollars to go. And, they've had to make some tough choices.
Speaking of tough choices, Sinclair, in your article in the Chicago Sun-Times, looks like there's some issues between Sinclair and Marquee.
Yes. So Sinclair has been their broadcast partner. Like Standard Media is the broadcast partner to help distribute Chicago Sports Network. From the beginning, this has been a Marquee and Sinclair operation. Sinclair is, if not the widest distributor of or owner of television stations, it's one of. I forget the exact ranking, but they have television stations all over the country. They're a part of Yes Network. They have Tennis Channel. They know how to distribute television programming, and Marquee got in business with them to help them do that. And they've done that. They've been on Comcast since opening day of 2020. They weren't there in the exhibition season, but that's going to happen. They've been on DirecTV. They were on Hulu, but then they never got on Hulu. Like they had a deal with Hulu, but then that quickly was torn up somehow. They've been on Fubo. They have their own streaming service. Marquee has been distributed well with help from Sinclair and with Marquee's own work on the app. But as we've been saying, their RSN model is not so slowly dying. Sinclair is losing tons of money over this operation. Prices for rights fees have gone up for them to pay the Cubs, while the money that they're making has gone down, and they want out. If you remember, in 2019, they bought the 21, what were then Fox Sports regional networks from Disney, because Fox had sold them all to Disney, but Disney, a judge ruled, had to get rid of those. And that's when Sinclair came in and took them. And again, the pandemic came and destroyed that business to the point where the company that took on those networks, Diamond Sports Group, went into bankruptcy court for well over a year to get that resolved. And they have come out successfully enough. But Sinclair wants to be out of the business, it seems, of RSN. Now, they do still have a stake in Yes Network, but that's like the gold standard of regional sports networks. You have the Yankees, but the Cubs are still the Cubs. They still have a national following. So it does strike me as odd that Yes has stayed on their website, but Marquee has disappeared from their website. If you go to their sports holdings, you see Yes Network, you see Tennis Channel, but you don't see Marquee anymore. And that did strike me as odd. But this has not been the cash cow that Crane Kenny had hoped, that Sinclair had hoped, that the Cubs had hoped. There are things that people say in this city that have come back to haunt them. And people have never forgotten when Crane Kenny said, my job is to fill up a wheelbarrow of cash and bring it to Theo's door. That hasn't quite happened to the extent that I think he thought at Marquee. And again, no one saw a pandemic coming, but they were late to the party when it came to the RSN. They couldn't get out of their deals fast enough. And by then it was 2019, and the Dodgers were well on their way with their agreement. That was the last of its kind, really. So there are some unforeseen and unfortunate occurrences in this situation, but still, there may have been things that they could have done differently. But again, hindsight is 2020. The bottom line is it hasn't worked out the way everybody had planned.
Well, there still is a chance for a deal to get done between Marquee and Comcast. It doesn't look like Comcast is dropping them altogether.
Correct. Yeah, that's the sense from people who I've talked to who are inside of this. Both sides, Marquee and Chicago Sports Network, whenever they end up on Comcast, and I think they will at some point. We just don't know when. They both realize they're going to have to be tiered to get on to get on or stay on the air. That's just where Comcast has been going all over the country. You can go coast to coast. Baltimore, Washington with the Orioles and Nationals. Masson got moved up last year. Pittsburgh, Seattle, It's all over, and it's consistent. They've even moved their own RSNs. Philadelphia has not been moved yet; they're still under contract. But NBC Sports Boston, the two in California, they've both been moved up. So it's just a matter of time as to when Marquee gets moved up. So it'll cost a little bit more, another $20 a month when that happens, if you want to subscribe to the higher tier. I'm a cable guy. I've had Comcast for years, and I need to have all my sports. So I'm a sucker who subscribes to the higher tier. So I don't think it's not gonna change my viewing habits. But I'm sure many people out there who are on the popular tier, in the middle one, are gonna have to make a decision if they want to pay another $20 a month, or if they want to change their viewing habits altogether and either ditch cable and subscribe to the Marquee app. Go to a streaming service. There are financial decisions that will be personal to people, and they'll have to make those if they choose.
Well, I was listening on the radio today on 670 The Score, and Crane Kenny was in the booth with Zach Zaidman and Ron Coomer, and he did talk a little bit. They were talking about streaming and definitely about the app, and it looks like they're putting more into the app than in the past. Like, for example, if you kind of jump into the middle of the game, it gives you the option of restarting the game from the very beginning or watching it live. Nice. So, I think that this is something, when you talk about the future of how people consume, sports, I'm wondering how much streaming, obviously streaming is going to play a big role in that, but I'm also wondering if, this is something. For being a Cubs season ticket holder, they give me the MLB network for free. I'm wondering if that might be a perk in the future, because for me, honestly, I'd rather not go up another tier and just get the Marquee app and be happy. But, for baseball in general, like my parents live right north of the border, Wisconsin, and they're blocked from MLB network. If they wanted to buy the MLB channel, they wouldn't be able to get the Brewers, the White Sox, or the Cubs because they live within a certain radius of an RSN. And so it all comes down to this blackout. And you have to wonder, at what point in time is baseball going to say, look, if we are to survive in this new TV landscape, we got to look at this blackout because this is just killing us.
Yeah, they know. I've heard Rob Manfred say on podcasts, in news conferences, they're well aware of the blackout situation and the lunacy of it. You mentioned that your area up north here, you go to Iowa, I think you're in Cardinals, Cubs, Sox, and Twins territory. So you can't get any of those, which is absurd. You go further west, there's more areas that have so much overlap that it doesn't make any sense, and it can't grow fans out in those areas. So they're aware of it. And I've heard Manfred say these words like, we're working on it. Please be patient. Problem is, we've been patient for a long time, or at least those people who've been affected have been patient for a long time. This has been going on for way too long to have this age of streaming being so prevalent, but having these archaic blackout rules still applying. So it's unfortunate and it stinks, but I do know they're aware of it. But just at what point can they finally do something? Their national deal with Fox and I believe TNT doesn't expire until 2028. So I would imagine those are, those are interactive in that they're one has to do with the other with blackouts. What's funny though is in spring training, there are no blackouts. Like those games are so meaningless that anybody can watch them anywhere they are, but you still can't have that happen in the regular season. So they are giving us this sort of gift for preseason games. But yeah, at some point they do need to address this. It really is enough already.
Well, Jeff, I appreciate you kind of helping set me straight here. Like I said, I've been in a tizzy wondering if I'm going to lose my Marquee.
Yeah, you're not. Well, I shouldn't say that. Like it won't be dropped. There's no anticipation of it being dropped. It's just probably going to move. The question is, will CHSN then appear with it? Because I've wondered if Marquee moves up, then why can't the other network in town appear and move up as well? So that's really my big question, is when is that going to get on the air? I think Marquee is going to be safe, just on a higher tier.
All right. Well, Jeff, can you tell our listeners where they can find your work and where they can find you on the socials?
Very kind of you. Yes, I'm at the Sun Times. So we're at suntimes.com. And I'm on X at Jeff Agrest. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram. Wow, I didn't realize I'm on all this stuff. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. You can find me in all these places, but always the stuff is always available all the time, 24/7 at suntimes.com.
And you can make a donations to the Sun-Times too as well, and always help kind of keep the good work going. Thanks, Jeff, for jumping on, and we'll keep in touch. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, Crawly, time to talk about the upcoming Cubs schedule. And they have they taken a day off yet in spring training? I mean, I'm glad there's baseball, but these games are coming at us fast and furious.
Yeah, there is going to be a little break coming up. We have not had an off day since the first game. Monday, March 3rd at 2:10, the Cubs take on Arizona at Arizona. The game will be broadcast on 670 The Score. And then on Tuesday, March 4th, 2:05 start versus San Diego at Sloan on Marquee. And then Wednesday, we get to breathe, Dustin.
Wednesday's that day off, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, mark that on your calendar. All right, Crawly, that is a wrap. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram. We're on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call us. Got a Cubs question? Email Crawly and I, flythew670@gmail.com, flythew670@gmail.com. And you can watch us, that's right, by subscribing to Crawly's Clubhouse YouTube channel.
And Dustin, this is going to be, like I said, I love the day off, but I also love this baseball. Let's get back to winning spring training games. Go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!